Right then, welcome back, and today we're going to help Mr. Burt with his Panigale problem at Snetterton. Now, I don't like this track. Well, I say that. It's not a track that I enjoy. I won't say I don't like it, I just don't enjoy it. It is quite a difficult track to learn. It's not the easiest thing in the world, and that's the setup that Burt had in. And what I found was the bike wanted to step sideways under power, and also it felt like it was dropping into corners. It felt like it didn't have any support. So as we come up to this left-hand bend, as we get on the gas on the way out, you see it just starting to walk a little bit on power, and then we go down towards the hairpin, and I was struggling to stop it. It didn't feel like it was keying into the tarmac, and we ended up running on. So we went again, and you could just see every time I want to get on the gas, the back end is just sort of like turning the bike round, twisting it around constantly. But I persevered. I did the full 5 laps. I ran anti-wheelie 2, engine braking 2, and I didn't run any traction because I wanted to see where the grip was and what it was doing. And we had more energy going into the rear tyre than the front, which would probably explain why it felt like it was difficult to stop Burt. You need to try and have a balance of energy. The front tyre's got to do the work in the braking zone, and the back tyre's got to do the work in the acceleration zone. But it was okay as setups go. I've ridden a lot worse. It was very usable. Braking, I can see why you said you were struggling with braking. I had some fun and games on the brakes. It did take me a couple of laps to remember where the braking points were. I'll go through them when I put a revised setup in. I'll go through the braking points and everything else. But yeah, it was interesting to say the least, but it worked. AI is on 120%. We're on no rewinds. It's on simulation physics. The joint brakes on nothing like that. It's just how I race the bikes generally. That's how I approached it. And like I say, it went okay. It was all right. The total race time was 8:58.8, which is more important than the lap time. So I had a look through the setups that I've got for the Panigale V4R, which is quite a few. And I basically looked at the all-track setup and I thought, well, if I've mucked about with it before and played with it, then I'll stick that setup in. But a preload of 3 on the front and 3 on the rear, basically, to me, that's going to understeer. I didn't want it to understeer. We needed a bit more snap on acceleration as well, and there's another reason for that, which we'll come on to when we do the track guide. I moved the calibrations to aggressive. I didn't alter the final ratios. And I was just like, I saved it. Call it new Mr. Burt. So we've got Mr. Burt and new Mr. Burt. I've got a bit more support on the front end with the preload, and I've got a lot more support on the front end regards springs and set ends, and I've dropped a little bit of rear support off. Which, when it comes to moving energy about in the bike, you think, well, that won't work. Well, this is what we did differently. I put another click of front preload on, and then I added a click to the rear spring hardness and the rear rebound and rear damping, and that's where we ended up. So instead of 1 and 3, 3 and 4, and 8 and 3 on the springs, apart from the rear, I left the rear on 2. I just didn't think it needed to move any quicker. I thought it was nice how it was, and we went again. The biggest change I made was I put the traction control on 1. Now the reason I did that is because of the changes I've made to the bike. It does, now the front tyre is gripping, it does make the rear of the bike a little bit, I'll call it mobile. It just wants to move a little bit more under braking, but under acceleration, and bear in mind this is on the medium tyre, so but if you were struggling to get heat in the medium tyre, you can drop to a soft. If you find you're overheating anything, you could pop it up to a hard, and you're not going to overheat the tyres, you're going to get a nice balance of energy. But pretty much straight out the blocks, once we'd got a couple of corners done, the bike was driving cleanly, it's driving forwards much more cleanly, and it was stopping much better as well. I did run a couple of times, I missed the braking points, like I said, it's been a while since I've been at Snetterton, but it felt more usable. It wasn't dropping into the corners too much. It felt like it was supporting itself, and like I say, I did run wide a couple of times, but if green paint isn't for using, what's the point in having it there? And yeah, we slowly but surely generated heat in the tyres. Again, I wasn't chasing lap times. I did put it on through a time trial on the leaderboards a little bit later on, which we'll come to. But yeah, all in all, across the 5 laps, I felt that the bike was more consistent. It wasn't relying on me hitting the braking points exactly to be able to stop. There was a little bit of margin in the braking zones. You could use the rear brake by tapping the A button a little bit, and I did run it again with linked brakes, which I knocked it down to realistic physics, because I didn't ask you what physics model you were on, so I do apologise, mate. It's one of the things I meant to ask you, but I didn't. But yeah, we stuck it through a 5-lap cycle. The tyres are green and green. And braking points. So into turn 1, look for the Brembo sign before the 300 metre braking marker. Double apex corner through Riches. You don't have to hit them exactly, as long as you stand the bike up and get on the gas for turn 2, the hairpin. Use the braking marker, the 300 metre marker. Hard on the brakes, as hard as you can. If you're using ABS, it's fine. If you're not using ABS, it's not a problem. Bleed the brakes off as you drop into the turn and be patient on the gas. Now this is a problem, this braking zone, because there's no marker. So because there's no marker, we've got to look a bit further out, and there is a lamppost behind the barrier. When that passes through your peripheral vision, you just want to give it a little bit of a dab on the brakes. It's not a big braking zone, just a little tap on the brakes. Again, patient on the throttle, wait for it to straighten up and stand the bike up a little before you get on the gas. Another hairpin, this one's easy, just before the braking marker. Again, on the brakes, leave yourself some margin. If you need to use a bit of rear brake, just tap the button. And it's patience. The thing with Snetterton is patience, because a lot of the corners go on for quite a while. This one's fun. There's no braking marker, so we're going to use the end of the barrier that's like an orangey yellow colour. Again, on the brakes, you can drop a gear if you want. You don't have to. You get a bit better response out of there. And this one's a bit weird as well, because it's when the racing line comes back across to the left-hand side of the track. It's before the markers on the right. Double apex again at Oggie's turn 6. Hit the first apex, hit the second apex. And then it's the barrier across on the right hand side for the braking zone for the right hand bend before you go onto the back straight. Another long corner. And this is the problem with Snetterton. If you have a bike that's got no edge grip on the rear tyre, you're in long corners constantly. Down the back straight, flat out, shorter gear in. This one's easy. It's the 300 metre board, or just before it. Stay across to the right hand side of the track until just before you get to the bridge, and then you're going to nip this inside curb, straighten the bike up, and just another dab on the brakes. You can drop to first if you want, and then again, patience, stand the bike up, drive forwards, and then the barrier on the left, with a red cover on the end, that's your braking zone. Down a gear, into the bomb hole, through the bomb hole, stand it up, get on the gas, and just before you hit the limiter in third, look for the advertising hoardings across on the right hand side, and you can lift off, or you can give it a little dab of brake. You don't need a lot of brake. And now this one's awkward, all the way through Coram, and then you've got to wait until you can see through to the last corner, stand the bike up, and then get on the brakes. Again, you can drop to first, you can leave it in second. I went down to first, and I shouldn't have done really, because I dropped the gear and it just caused a bit of a slide. And then we go across the line, and I think we do a 1:45.5, which it's not quite as fast as the initial go on your setup. So in the race, your setup was actually quicker. It was just a bit harder to use. Total race time across the 5 laps was 8:54, which is only 4 seconds, so you weren't far off, mate, with the setup. It just needed a little bit more support to give you a bigger operating window. We went again. Like I said, I turned the physics from realistic to advanced, and then put the joint brakes on, so that's going to put a little bit of rear brake on for you. And if you keep an eye on the speedo and the dashboard and everything in the bottom right hand corner, you can see that when I'm getting on the brakes, there's a tiny little bit of rear brake. So throttle is the big green bar on the left, well, just to the right of the rear tyre. The big long one is throttle, and then the upper one is front brake, and then the little one below it is rear brake. So when I get on the brakes, you can see there's just a tiny little trace of red in the bottom of that box, just showing you that it's just putting a little bit of rear brake on. I did knock the electronics down. I went anti-wheelie 2, engine braking 1, traction control 1. It took me a few corners to get used to it. It's not something that I do usually. I'm not used to having the rear brake helping me out. Engine braking 2, it was sliding the bike sideways. It was a little bit of a show off, to be fair. But engine braking 1, the bike's much more in line. It's not sliding about as much. The braking zones, probably just give yourself 5 or 10 meters more if you're going to use that setup. But just give yourself a little bit more time to get the bike stopped, because the engine braking is not working quite. Sorry, the rear brake's not working quite as well as the engine braking was previously. So, but you can see the bike is. It's much more stable, it's much more controlled, it's a slightly slower rate of turn because the rear brake's dragging the bike back, so it will pull you into the bends, but it just slows the yaw rate down a little bit, whereas if you leave it just all on the front brake and use the rear brake as you need to, you find that using the front brake, it'll let you flick it about a little bit. But yeah, total race time for that was 8:55.8, so 1.6 slower than using engine braking 2 with just the front brake, and about 3 and a bit seconds quicker than the original setup. So yeah, we did do a time attack. Naughty lap. By now I'd done about, well, done the best part of 20 laps around here, so I was pretty up to speed on the braking points. I ran the setup in the middle stint, so anti-wheelie 2, engine braking 2. The only difference is I turned the traction control off just to help me steer the bike a little bit on exit. So you'll see as I'm coming out the corners, the bike, it's just moving the rear tyre out of line, getting a little bit of heat in it and just driving it forwards. It's up to you, whatever you feel comfortable with. Me, I know that you said that you struggle with the bike possibly reacting a little bit too quickly in the past, so it's just finding where you can operate in this little window. I haven't turned the preload up too much because obviously running low preload suits the way that you play the game, so I tried to leave the preload as low as I could. But yeah, it was quite a quick lap. We ended up doing a 1:43.7, which on the leaderboards would have put us 19th, so it's not a setup that I would have run myself. I like to run a little bit more rear preload, probably one less click on the front preload as well. So, but yeah, it's a quick bike. You don't need to run anti-wheelie 3, you don't need to run any more than traction control 2. If you turn the electronics up any more than that, you are just wasting time with the electronics dragging you back. I mean, you did say that everything was fully tuned. If I've misinterpreted that and you've actually running on like stock tyres or something like that, even with the stock tyres on, you don't need to be running anti-wheelie 3 and traction 2 or anything like that. Just leave the anti-wheelie on 2 and you'll be fine, mate. But that's 120% AI as well, so hopefully whatever AI level you're running, you should be a bit sharper. There we go, 19th. I mean, Meerkat is away with the fairies on a 1:40.4, so yeah, I've only got to find what, 3.3 seconds. Yeah, no problem, I'll do it tomorrow when I first get up. No, I won't. But yeah, so there you go, just a quick rundown, the facts and figures for you, my good friends, with the anti-wheelie settings, the engine braking settings and everything else, and the traction control settings, just to give you a rundown. And that's it, mate. I hope it helps, and everyone else who's watching, I hope the circuit guide and the braking point highlights help, because it's quite a tricky circuit, Snetterton, to get to grips with. It's something, I must admit, I struggled with it. I remember having about 25 goes at that exact 1000cc race. It took me a long time to get past that race, so don't feel any consternation if you're struggling with it a little bit. And that's it. Thanks for watching, Bert. Send me some feedback, let me know how you get on, and if you need any help or anyone else needs any help with a circuit guide or setups or anything like that, just pop me a comment on one of the videos, and give me a couple of days. It took me the best part of 4 or 5 hours to get this done and get it edited up and everything else, so give me a bit of time and hopefully we can get you sorted out. But thanks for watching, fingers crossed. I will see you next time. Take care, stay safe, peace.